And thank you for joining Carlson Software for this little bit different webinar. Typically these are held Thursday afternoons over the lunch hour, but today we're doing a Monday one to accommodate some of the different survey conventions going on later this week. This morning's topic is migration from discontinued or software that is being discontinued. These predominantly include Land Development Desktop as announced by Autodesk last year, and toward the end of last year the announcement from Eagle Point that they would be discontinuing their software in the next year or two. Recognizing that a lot of folks will be looking for options and where to go, we thought it would be appropriate to point out some of the migration possibilities with Carlson Software. My name is Jim Reinbold, and I work for Carlson Software covering most of the western United States, the Rocky Mountains, Pacific Northwest. I'm joined by Ladd Nelson, who will be answering your questions as you type those in today, and he is covering the Midwest area based out of Iowa. So if you haven't logged in already, you obviously can't see the screen, but if you have, hopefully the folks are noting the phone number and access code and getting dialed in. Looks like most of the folks are in there already, so we're doing pretty good there. Go ahead and work through a little bit of a PowerPoint here, thinking that some of you may not be completely familiar with Carlson Software. And we'll get you advanced here to the next slide. Carlson Software has been around since 1983. For the Land Desktop folks and the Eagle Point folks, that's a key year because that's the same year that both of those companies were started by their respective owners. Carlson Software is based out of Maysville, Kentucky. This is about an hour southeast of Cincinnati. We have programming offices in Boston in addition to Maysville, and a number of satellite offices in other countries. We're staffed by over 60 people, including over 10% of our staff are licensed engineers or surveyors. So we actually have professional folks on staff. We have PhD computer scientists, as well as folks with master's degrees in hydrology. So well-based in the fundamentals and the study of the subjects that are the core of our software. We work in the civil engineering, surveying, construction markets, as well as mining. So you may have, if you've been in other industries, bumped into Carlson Software before. When you work with Carlson Software, it can be installed with AutoCAD or IntelliCAD. This is one of the big advantages. You're not locked into a single CAD platform. We run on any version of AutoCAD or MAP from 2000 through 2010. We are up and running on that latest version. If you don't own AutoCAD today, you can also use Carlson with IntelliCAD. It is an alternative CAD DWG engine, and we include that with the software at no additional cost. So whenever you purchase that, you'll get the IntelliCAD with it. We do have a good deal of information regarding IntelliCAD on our website if you'd like more on that. Carlson provides technical support direct from our manufacturer, our offices in Maysville and Boston, to our customers. You don't have to own the software. You don't have to have a maintenance or subscription plan. You don't have to even be on the current version. The folks in Maysville have multiple versions loaded up. They've got manuals for all these things. If you have a question, we want to get that answered. We do offer subscriptions or what we call maintenance, but those are not required in order to get free technical support. We also use that as a way to keep our programmers informed of what's going on with the software. So as you call in with questions, issues with the software, we can get things fixed right away, but also if it's new functionality, we can get that added into the software. Carlson does do a lot of dynamic work. If you've been using Land Desktop, you're familiar with some of this. If you've been using Eagle Point and you use surface models with ARX objects, you may have seen some of this. But we are dynamic. We do updates automatically for not only annotation, but for things like ponds. But we do this without using any proprietary objects. This means that what you're creating is easily shared with anybody else out in the market. There are no objects. We're using simply lines, polylines, text, blocks, standard AutoCAD entities. What you're seeing on the screen now is a sampling of some of our menus, and we'll see these again when we get in the software. But these are different conversion routines that are available within our software. You'll note some of these are specific to Land Desktop or Civil 3D. At the bottom of the points menu, we have conversions for Eagle Point points. We have conversions for Softdesk points. We have conversions for Land Desktop Civil 3D into Carlson points. We also do contours. We import road count cross-section files. So the idea is we want to get out there and give users the opportunity to access that legacy data and continue to use that in the future. This is the circle of Carlson Software, the spectrum that we cover. In the market today, I don't believe there's anyone else that covers as broad a spectrum of software, beginning all the way from the field data collection software through all of the construction and job billing phase. So today, some of the things we'll be focused on are some of the survey issues, working with Carlson Survey 2010. The other item here, the Carlson SurvNet, is a network lease squares adjustment program. This can be purchased by itself, but it's also included as part of the Carlson Survey software. If any of you have been familiar with C&G Survey software in the past, that is also now completely embedded inside Carlson Survey 2010. We also offer a full line of civil engineering software through Carlson Civil. We will combine our civil along with our survey with GIS and hydrology to form the Carlson Civil suite. And so that's the one bundle that we do sell. For the folks out there, we don't have as many modular breakdowns as Eagle Point did, but we have a few more than what Land Desktop did. But we still maintain a modular base, so you can go through and select the tools that you need. If you're a surveyor strictly doing boundary, you don't need to get into the civil and the hydrology. If you're an engineer but you contract out all the hydrology work, don't purchase a module if you don't need it. Buy what you need. So those are some of the modules that we have available there. At this point, Lad, if there are any questions that need to be addressed, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to jump right into the software.
It looks real good.
All right. So let's jump over here into AutoCAD. I am running with AutoCAD 2010, just in case folks are curious about that. The computer I'm using is a Dell laptop. It has 2 gig of RAM in it, and I think it's about a 1.6 gigahertz processor. Not exactly a huge monster animal, but we are running the AutoCAD 2010, so we're up on the latest version. A couple things to note here, because I'll be using them as we go through. The toolbar here is how I switch modules. So I can go from survey to civil to hydrology simply by clicking these, and it swaps out the menus at the top. Survey menus there, civil menus, hydrology menus. These are also available off of our settings menu under Carlson menus. Another way to get at that. One of the questions that Lad had actually before we even started had to do with data folders. We do offer a couple of options here. We go under settings and project data folders. There are 3 ways to set this up. When you install it, by default we're using a fixed folder, which means all of the data goes to one place. Doesn't matter how many projects you're working on, they're all there. For the Eagle Point folks out there, the drawing folder, this is Eagle Point's default. All of your data goes in the same folder with your drawing. Based on my background, that's the one I'm most comfortable with, so that's the one I default to. For the Land Desktop folks out there, we do offer a project folder option where you can set up your own subfolders, and we even give you, here's a couple of examples, but you can save these out to files, and we actually have a couple of sample files that will set this up to match, very similar to what you would have had with LandDesktop. Once you get a subfolder structure established, you can save it out so you can share that with other folks in your office. And then we can go in and tell it what data file needs to be put into which folder. You'll notice a lot of these have already been directed. Again, you can load a file, and we do have sample files that you can use to load these up so that they match more closely what you might have had with LandDesktop. The idea being you don't have to change how you store your data just because you're changing softwares. If somebody's looking for a centerline file, they're still going to go into the alignment section or subfolder in the project. If they're looking for a surface, they're going to go into the, I can't remember the name of the file that they used here. Give me a second. They'll go to the DTM folder. The idea is, let's make it simple. Keep your data stored where it's always been stored. All right, I'm going to switch back to drawing folder here since that's my default. Once you've selected those and organized those guys, you don't have to go back into it each time. It comes back up in the format you had selected. Okay, so what we want to do today is look at some of the different ways that we can bring in that existing data and work with it. I do have some drawings that I'll be working with today, so I'll just go to File and Open and get into today's folder, which is down here, our transition webinar. And we'll start with this drawing. And what we have here are simply a group of points. These were created through EaglePoint. So you can see we've got some different descriptions and so forth. Now, a couple different ways I can deal with this. I can go into our points menu, which is available regardless of module. For the LandDesktop folks, this will seem more like your software. For EaglePoint, it's a little bit of a change, but there's a core in those first 7 menus that is always available, regardless of whether you're in Survey, Civil, Hydro. Beyond that, we add additional menus for the specific functionality of the module that you're in. So what I would do here is simply come down to Convert Format. We want to convert points to Carlson, so we're going from EaglePoint to Carlson. It asks me in the command line to select the objects. We'll just put a window around all of those. Hit Enter. And you can see them all changing color as they are converted to Carlson points. It's that simple to get your points converted to Carlson points, which means now I can use any of these commands on them to move the attributes with leader, resize those. We recognize these as being Carlson points now. We can also zoom in a little bit here, and you'll notice we're holding the descriptions, so none of those things have changed. It's all the same information as far as point number, description, and elevation. All right. If we undo these, they're back to EaglePoint points. When I converted those, it converted them on screen, but it did not add them to our coordinate file or our point database. At the top here, you'll notice that we have a CRD and it says none. Well, that's our coordinate file. When you simply convert the points, they're in the drawing, but they're not in the coordinate file. To move those points to the coordinate file, whether they've been converted or not, you would actually use the coordinate file utilities. So once they were converted, I would create a coordinate file. By default, it names itself the same as your drawing. You can change that name if you want to. And these are all the different things we can do. If I left those converted, I could simply update the CRD from the drawing, and it would put them all in there. But let's see what happens if I try and do that before I convert it. Let's update the CRD from the drawing. It asks if we want to match the descriptions. Yeah, that's good. Do we want to update those? No, I just want to leave them what they are. And it says select objects. The key here is 2 lines up. where it says select Carlson Software, LDD, Softdesk, Inroads, EaglePoint, Geodometer, or Leica points. Any of those formats, I select these, hit enter, and it will actually add those points to my coordinate file, and I'm simply listing them here. These are all in my coordinate file. So without converting the points, I can add them to the coordinate file and now use those points to do any COGO routine I want. So I can zoom in here and I can do an inverse in COGO between point 283 and 281 and get that inverse information on my command line. It's not actually using the point in the drawing, it's using the point in the CRD file. So you can choose whether you want to convert those points graphically or not. That's up to you. We can still utilize them in either case. All right, go ahead and save that. You'll also notice that I didn't actually create a project. I simply went into the drawing and started working on it. This will be one of the differences you discover. Carlson, unlike EaglePoint, does not require that I go through a specific project setup with each drawing. So again, here I've got EaglePoint points in here, and we can simply convert those by going to our Convert EaglePoint to Carlson format, select the objects, and you may be able to see it going through there. It's a little hard with the size of this particular drawing. But when we zoom in, you can see these. And again, these are simple blocks. Double click on it and I can actually go in and edit attributes if I choose to do that. All right, so that's converting points. Other things that you will want to be able to convert. You're going to want to deal with your centerline files. Well, the good news is both LandDesktop and EaglePoint use polylines to create their center lines. And so we can simply use those polylines to generate a Carlson centerline file. We'll open up another drawing here. So here's a drawing that was actually created with EaglePoint. Has several center lines in it. You notice this one starts at station 1 plus a pair, has a couple of horizontal curves in it. If we click on it, you can see it's a continuous polyline. Curve here and another curve starting up in here. So to make that a Carlson centerline, simply go to my centerline menu, and this is available in both Civil and Survey. So if you are doing strictly Survey, you can still do this horizontal work. We're going to take a polyline to a centerline, give it a name, and again, this default name is coming from our drawing name. So we'll call this Road 1 instead. Save. It wants to know what station we're starting at. Well, we looked down here earlier and saw we're at 1 plus a pair. So we'll put that in, and then it wants the polyline. I can select anywhere on the polyline, and it knows where to start by where it was drawn from. So here I've got my starting station, my PCs, my lines, all listed out. So we hit enter, and we're done. We can go to centerline, input edit centerline, and load Road 1. You'll notice that it actually figured out where I am. It knows that I'm in this transition webinar folder. Each of the drawings I've pulled up have been in that same folder, so the data for each of those is going to that same folder. So here's my center line. As I click on a segment, it highlights that segment for me. I can go through and edit any of these segments if I need to, changing radiuses, delta angles, making any adjustments I need to there. You have access to speed tables for reference here, so you can pull those up and make sure you're meeting the parameters that you need to. All right. So that's one down. Now, in setting this center line up and converting it, it worked out well because with Eagle Point, it's always stationed based on the end it was drawn from. So starting station is down here. This is where the drawing started. So that worked out well. But what if the stationing isn't going the right direction or the line wasn't drawn the right direction? Carlson does give you utilities to work with these polylines, including things like reversing the polyline. So I can click on that, and the little arrows tell me that now this polyline starts here and goes toward the other road. Now it starts at the road and goes away. So I can simply reverse the direction so I know it's going the direction that I want it to. I don't have to necessarily draw it in that direction. All right. So that's our center line. Another thing I'll point out at this time is I actually have all of these drawings open, and I can move back and forth between them. Just for fun, I'm going to convert these points again. So now I have the points converted and the points in the database both. There we go. Point of interest possibly for anyone out there that may be using Carlson SurvCE in the field to do their survey. This coordinate file, CRD file we're talking about, that is the exact same CRD file that's used on the data collector. So that goes back and forth seamlessly. So we can go ahead and jump between drawings, but the interesting thing is the software actually keeps track of where you are, so it knows what folder it should be working with. So we got our center lines done. Next one is, what do we do with profiles? How do we handle working with the profiles? In Eagle Point, profiles are written out to typically written out to a separate drawing file. And we'll go ahead and open one of those up. They have a standard naming convention, RCPRF or Road Calc Profile, and then the sub-project number because you need to have sub-projects with your Road Calc projects. And so here's a typical profile. I have the green for the existing ground, the red for the proposed ground, and it's nicely labeled and works well within Eagle Point. So how do I get this profile written into Carlson? Well, in my Civil program, I go to my profile menu, and I have a variety of ways to convert data or graphical information into a profile file. We can do this obviously from surface entities or from surface models, 3D polylines, and so on. In this case, we're going to use the profile from Polyline on Profile Grid. I don't have a grid, but I do have the data that I need here. We'll give the profile a name. And then we need to think about some things like, what's our horizontal scale? Well, in Eagle Point, it draws a horizontal scale real distance. So the distance from 1 plus 0, 0 to 2 plus 0, 0 is 100 units. So that's really 1. The vertical scale is actually exaggerated, so by 10, so we'll do 0.1. How do I know that? Well, aside from the fact that it would be an Eagle Point default to have a 10-to-1 vertical exaggeration, I earlier today went through and did the math between the two elevations and checked the distance. It's 10-to-1. Our starting grid will be the 1 plus 0, 0, and I can read the starting elevation there at 112.4. When I click OK, it wants me to pick the lower left grid corner, or the grid corner that matches the elevation and station I gave it. So if I did have a grid, you can see how that would work. It automatically turned on my O-snaps, so it will snap to the endpoint of the line. We pick that. And now it wants to know, what profile is this? Well, we'll let it be profile number 1. And the polyline I want to write out is that one. So the file's been written out now. We can actually view that with the input edit profile, and you can see how this whole profile has been brought in. And here you can see how our elevation ranges are matching, and we can track along this guy to see where we are. We also give you station elevation and slope data as we go through that. So a lot of good information in there. All right. So we've got our center lines converted. We've got our profiles converted. We can convert points that are in our drawing. But what about the guys out in the field? What about the guys who have been coding stuff and need to bring it in? Well, a couple different things going on here for the Land Desktop versus the Eagle Point users. Land Desktop users, one of the things I will mention is in our general configuration settings, we do give you the option to use a Land Desktop database. So we can actually read those existing MDB files that you have out there and pull points from those. So if those are existing, you're good to go with those. Or you can use that as the format that you store your points in today. For the Eagle Point folks, we actually give you tools inside the Survey module in what we call Draw Field to Finish. This is similar to your data collection module. Now when we go into Field to Finish, it wants to know what CRD file we're using. So I'll just let it default to that name and move on from there. Cancel that. Skip all bad symbols. I'm ahead of myself already here. So what I want to do is our Field to Finish is asking us, what points do we want to do? What are we going to draw? This is similar to the Land Desktop description keys. So again, we can draw line work automatically. If I go into Edit the Codes and Points, I'm going to ignore the data that's in here and go into the code table settings and tell it I want to create a new code file. So we'll come in and we'll create a new one. By default, look at the folder it's selected. It's a separate settings folder. It's in my Carlson projects folder. You can define where you want these settings to be. So this could just as easily be on a network drive where everyone in the company can access the same settings. And we'll just call this EP2 and click Open. And I'm alerted that it doesn't exist. Well, I'm on the existing tab instead of the new tab. I'll go ahead and create it now. It says the current code library has been changed. I don't need to save any changes there. So now my current table is the EP2 table. From this dialog box, I can actually import Eagle Point codes. I can import Land Desktop description keys. So either one of those can be brought right in here so I don't have to start from scratch. For the Eagle Point folks, we can actually tell it we want to process using Eagle Point line codes. We can look at those special codes, and like Eagle Point, you can even edit what those descriptors are that tell the software to do these different functions, during closes, curves, and so on. As you start using Carlson, I suspect you will migrate away from those. It's a great way to start because you don't have to change your field work. But within Carlson, we offer a few more special codes to control what happens and how things come in. Like Eagle Point, these are user definable, so you can make sure that your begin line work is a period just like it was in Eagle Point, so that nobody has to change what they do in the field. But this way you could take care of all of the, or take advantage of all of the additional new functions. So those are available to you as well. Since I got rid of my other library, I have no codes back here. So let's go ahead and import Eagle Point codes. I do have a copy of the default Eagle Point field code library. Now the way you get this text file is you go into Eagle Point, you go into the field code libraries, and tell it you want to export a library. When you do the export, that export creates a comma-delimited file of each of the codes in the library. That's the file that we read in. It imported 50 codes. We see those there, and I'm ready to go work with that. What you see here as far as codes, categories, descriptions, is user definable. You have column options down here so you can put other data up there. If we go look at one of these, for instance, the benchmark, click on Edit. Here's all the different things I can do with that. I've got the code, description, full name, layer that it's going to, symbol. Well, the Eagle Point symbol is BM. I don't have that symbol. If I simply click on that, I can go through and find a symbol in Carlson that looks similar to what BM was and simply use that. So there will be some adjustment that needs to be done as you go through the migration. I get all the data in here, so I know I've got all my codes, but I may need to go through and make adjustments as far as what's being done with specific symbols or line types.
And Jim, if I could just interrupt, for those users that are out there that already have those blocks, maybe their own custom symbols or line types, layering conventions, whatever, you can certainly put those into your CAD search path and continue to use them. So you don't necessarily have to go through and make those changes. It's just that, again, we don't necessarily ship all the same blocks that everybody else does. But yeah, you can use your own, or you can use the ones that we provide with the software.
Absolutely correct. If you have existing blocks for trees, survey symbols that you want to bring in, those can all be brought into the library and used, and not a problem at all. We also have categories here, and I'm going to scroll down a little more here, go to my center line. And again, didn't find the center line symbol. I would probably just go with something simple like a dot for the center line. But here it's saying points only. Well, typically you would connect those, and in Eagle Point you'd connect those with either a 2D or a 3D polyline. And Carlson offers that same option. We also give the option to do both a 2D and a 3D polyline and set a special layer for the 3D polyline. So I can set both of those up, have nice line types with dashes and so forth for my 2D polyline, but create the 3D polyline because that's what Carlson's going to use in the office when it creates its surface model. The other thing that is unique to Carlson here is how it utilizes those shots. In Eagle Point, it's working sequentially through your file. So if point 50 is a center line and point 57 is a center line, it'll connect 50 to 57. And hopefully they're going in the right direction. But if you backed up and shot a point between those and it's logged as point 59, your center line is going to double back on itself. Carlson actually gives you a second option to use the nearest found rather than sequential, which allows you to do that backup and keep your line running in a proper manner. So we give you a couple of extra options there. We do offer non-surface points, hard break lines, those types of options that everyone's accustomed to seeing. We have specific webinars that have gone through nothing but customizing and working with this information. A lot of options. Today we really want to focus on things that will help in your migration process. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll just switch that to 2D for now. Oh, the last thing I was going to do here, and I didn't, is I can set up point groups at this time. So I could tell it that this is part of my roads point group. So that will group it in points. I can also break down the code here in a similar manner. I'm going to add several of these here. Let's do control. The advantage of having these categories is I can go through and do things and like take plus and put it in control, and X goes in control. My benchmark goes under control. This is a proposed benchmark. I can take my tree and put in vegetation, grab both of those. I can grab my center line and put it in roads. So now when I'm starting to work with these, I can actually start limiting my list to the specific symbols and codes that I want to work with at that time. I can always look at them all, but I can also sort them. It gives me a little more control over what I'm looking at. Now, I mentioned the point groups. We set up the center line to go to the road point groups. For the Land Desktop folks, this is critical. You've used point groups for a long time. For the Eagle Point folks, you've wanted to use these for a long time and just not had the ability. Go ahead and save that, and we'll cancel that. But the point groups are found underneath points. Let's jump back to that other drawing where we converted those points. We actually have some data in the point file. But we can go in and set up point groups through the Point Group Manager. And here you simply create a new group, give it a name, and then we can start including things. Like rather than including all the points, I want to include specific points based on where they are in the drawing, where they are in the CRD file. We can grab description. And let's see, what's a good description here? Do we have any good ones? Not good ones for roads, it looks like. Well, let's just go ahead and do the break line. So we'll use the BL description. So in here we'll just do BL. So that's what we want to do, points. And you can, once you have them in this group, you have all this type of control to freeze these off and isolate the different point groups and work with those in that manner. So kind of a new function to work with for the Eagle Point folks, but definitely the support for the Land Desktop folks that you've been waiting for. All right. Well, that takes us through some of the direct conversions, support of existing data. There are or is another methodology that is fairly widely used to move data between design platforms. Some of you have probably heard of this. It's called LandXML. LandXML is to project data what DXF is to graphical information. So LandXML doesn't care that you have lines in your drawing. What it's looking at is you have centerline data, surface data, and how do we convert that into a format that other design platforms can read. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually create a new project for the first time. I say create a new project, but it's a little different, I think, than what you're expecting. We'll click on New. We use templates, so you can create your own AutoCAD template file and use that. And let's see, I need to pick one out of this list here, it looks like. There's my Carlson 2010. We do provide a default one if you don't have one created yet, but you can take any one of your DWG files that you've been using to start Eagle Point projects, save it as a DWT, and be good to go. It wants me to give it a drawing name, so we'll click Set, and I can actually browse out and find the file I want to use, the folder I want to store this in, and even specify a subfolder inside there. So I can get as specific and organized as I need to here. We'll give this a name. All right. And I can specify a horizontal scale, whether I'm working in English or metric, how I want symbols and text scaled. Hit Next. And it's going to show me where the data is being stored in the drawing folder, and it wants to create a CRD file. If I have existing CRD files I brought in from SurvCE, I can specify those. If it's new, I can tell it I'm going to download from a data collector. We support a wide variety of formats from data collectors or ASCII files that you can import directly. In this case, I'll leave it at none because I'm using LandXML. You'll find the LandXML import on our File menu, about halfway down where it says LandXML Import Export, and we are importing. The folder we're looking in is the same one the drawing's in, and it's the most recent folder that we used. If I back up one level, and it wants to go to XML files, that's not where I want to go. So I don't have the recent folder there, but I can browse out and go up a level and find an Eagle Point LandXML file. We'll open that up, and then we'll go ahead and get ready to open this. My point protection is on. Does the same thing that it has in other softwares. It makes sure you don't get 2 points with the same number. We're loading surfaces into the Carlson Surface Manager. But what we've got here are a series of existing points. There are some lots or parcels set up in here. I have 3 center lines, and I also have 4 different surfaces. Well, let's just go ahead and import all those. LandXML units are different than the drawing units. Well, I'm currently at US feet, they're at international feet. We can work in either, so I can choose to scale this or not scale this at this point. I'm just going to not scale it and let it go in. It wants me to set the coordinate file, so I'll switch to the New tab. Gives me the name that matches my drawing. And we'll replace that because the one that was there was the empty one we had earlier. Wants to take all of those parcels and put them into a subdivision lot file. We'll go ahead and do that. The original ground, name for that. The rock surface, pond surface, and the road. Now we're bringing in center lines, and I'm simply confirming the names. So if I want to change those for some reason, I can. So now I've got all of that data converted into a Carlson format.
And Jim, one other thing that's option in the import LandXML, there is a toggle that allows you to even have the software just automatically name those files for you, so you don't even have to click through that. So the prompt for each name option, you can say, well, just give me an automatic name by the LandXML file, right, and it'll come in very fast.
Yeah, saves you having to do that. So again, user option. All right, I brought all the data in, but guess what? I got nothing in my drawing. So how do we start getting information in the drawing? Well, we simply need to draw the various data files that we have available. So we can do things like go to centerline, tell it we want to draw the centerline file. It asks down here, what layer do you want that to go to? Well, C-line will be okay. So now I can come in and actually select one of these center lines and have it draw it. Do a zoom extents, and there we are. Go back and we can draw the other center lines. We'll put these on the same layer. Hit enter, bring up the same command, draw the last center line. So there's our little set of center lines. If we want to, we can go into our Civil module now, and under Surface, tell it we want to draw the surface boundary, layer that goes on. We'll do the original ground here. So there's the surface area I'm working in. We can contour this if we want to. We can actually go in and view these surfaces. Have a 3D surface viewer so we can see what this looks like. Vertically exaggerate it. Okay, that's a little too much. Zoom in on it. And this information, as you're looking at it, can actually be written out either to a BMP file, a bitmap file to be emailed to somebody, or you can run it out to a PDF file and email that to somebody. PDF file will actually allow you to include a title block with company logo and name and so forth. So those are kind of handy ways to communicate information back and forth. Now, one of the things that you will find different in Carlson, and I'll let you know there are some things that are different, is how we handle a road situation like this where you have multiple intersections. Traditionally, these have all been handled as independent corridors, and you'd go through and do each road, and then you have to somehow figure out how to handle all these intersections. This is something that Carlson does extremely well, and we do this through a utility called Road Network. With road network, we store the data for that network in a specific file with an RDN extension, and that data is displayed through a doc dialog box like this. The first thing we want to do is go into settings and tell it where the existing ground is, because we're going to tie our roads down to it. So we'll pick our original ground 10 that was brought in through LandXML. And now we can look at adding new roads. So let's go ahead and add the first road. We'll use a centerline file. We'll add our highway 5 here. Open that up. And we want to automatically define a profile. One of the things you may have noticed when we brought this in is whoever exported the LandXML chose not to export the profiles with it. So we didn't get complete data. So we'll actually work through doing some of our own profile stuff here. But the file's been generated. We go look at that profile or edit profile. We actually view that and see where we are in plan view at the same time. Now this particular one looks like the road jumps across the little stream bed here, and it does so, say from about station 14, and I'm looking at the top of the dialog here for stationing, and it gets itself back down by about station 19. I probably don't want to go a lot past 19 because when I'm looking at my plan view, I don't want to get into my intersection with a bridge. So we can look at doing a bridge, say, from 14 to 19. Don't necessarily need to add a vertical curve in here because this looks like it's a fairly decent alignment otherwise. We'll have some others that we can add vertical curves to, and we'll show you how we do that. So now I have a profile. The third thing that is in the required area is a template. Everybody coming from Land Desktop or Eagle Point is familiar with that. So we'll set up a new template, and we're actually going to use the same one on all of these. We'll just call it roads. We go in to edit that. This interface is different than what you're familiar with. I know for Eagle Point it's quite a bit different. Fairly straightforward though. We'll make the right and left side the same. So we'll start out by clicking on grade. Percent would be -2. We'll do a linear as opposed to a parabolic crown. And we'll go with 12-foot lanes. We're now going to assign an ID. Think of these IDs in Eagle Point as being like PT codes, only you get to name them, which means they're pretty much unlimited. Okay, so here's my crowned roadway. I can add a curb and gutter to it very quickly by selecting one of these three formats. I can adjust them however I need to by controlling the dimensions. Material will go concrete, and we'll call this curb CB. So we got our curb in there, and we'll just throw in one quick subgrade for our asphalt here, and we can do these in feet or inches. So we'll run this out to our edge of pavement, and we'll make it, say, 1/2 foot thick of asphalt. All right, there we go. So let's just, before we save that, there is one other piece we need to do. We need to assign cut and fill. So I'm just going to use a simple 3-to-1 for both cut and fill. This is a little different for the Eagle Point folks. We don't have the separate slope condition tables that you'd be using. We tie this in with the typical section here. I have my 3 main required file types, so we'll go ahead and hit OK there and see if we can get these other 2 roads added in real quick. Using the centerline file. If we didn't have centerline files, if this was simply a drawing, I could screen pick the polylines. We'll add our circle here. Creates the profile. Automatically grabs the same template that was assigned before. If I wanted to change it, I could, but by default it grabs the same one. Right? Go look at this profile. And a couple things to kind of note here. The circle ties in with the highway on both ends. That's what these little yellow lines are. It's showing the edge of the pavement of the highway and the center line of the highway. So I have both of those. And the other thing that we've done is this line's not tying in at the existing ground. It's tying in at the highway profile. Automatically, I don't have to write any numbers down or go through any special configurations to do that. Well, it'd be nice to add maybe a vertical curve down here and another one up top to make these come in a little nicer together. I could do that by coming in and inserting a PVI, simply highlight a row and it'll insert above it, and putting in the station and elevation I want for that PVI. The other option is I can graphically pick it by coming in here and saying, well, let's put one right about here. Let's give it, about an 80-foot vertical curve. And now we've got that point established. If I don't quite like that, I can move that up a little bit. I'm going to add another one up in here. We'll do another 80-footer up there. And I can double check. My grade on that steep section is only 3%. And that's being displayed at the top of the profile dialog. The reason it looks so steep is the vertical exaggeration is simply fitting the screen. If we were to do this, say, at a 5:1, it would look like that. So you can adjust your vertical exaggeration on the fly to work with this. Right? Now, this particular one already has sections set up. We can show those sections, see what they look like as we move along the roadway here to see our cut and fill and what that looks like. All right, we'll go ahead and close that. Save and exit here. We need to get the last road added in here real quick. And I'm running out of time fast. So centerline file. This is our court, our profile. We've got our template. Notice how it's coming off. My settings tell it to add this vertical curve. That's being done through the settings, and that can be set up however you want to add those or not add those. I'm just going to accept that profile. Obviously, this road wants to have a cul-de-sac on the end of it, so we can actually add that here and give it like a 45-foot radius with 20-foot fillets. All right. So now that we've established the 3 center lines, the profiles, and templates to be used, we can simply process this road. One of my settings told it to build a surface model of the roads, and I hadn't named it, so it prompts me for that. So there's my road surface model. Put a 2:1 vertical exaggeration on it. With my intersections fully graded, my cul-de-sac fully graded, ready to go or be adjusted. Lad, I'm looking at the clock. It looks like we've got about 5 minutes left. Are there questions I should address? I know I talked about a bridge, and we can go add that, but I want to make sure we hit questions before we hit the end of time.
Nope, I've been keeping up with the queue pretty well.
Okay. So everything's been answered there.
Yep.
Let's see if I can actually get through adding the bridge in here. What we're going to do is, in our template, we're going to go to our edit, and I'm going to remove the cut and fill, because in a bridge you wouldn't be filling in where that stream goes underneath. So we'll just get rid of those. And then I'm going to use the Save As button. And I'm going to call this Roads Bridge. So it's a different template, and we can exit that. So now I have 2 templates available. How do I get both of those in here? Well, if I click on the template file name here, there are 2 possible extensions. The TPL is our template file. The TSF is a template series file. And this is something that folks are probably familiar with from previous software, where you tell it what station, what template should be used. All right, so I add that extension, TSF, in here. Click Open. And again, I'm on the existing tab, so it's prompting me to actually create it since it doesn't exist. And now when I click Edit opposite my template, I get the template series file editor. So I can come in and add these, start with our standard roads template, add that in, add another one at station 14 plus a pair. That's our bridge template. And tell it not to transition with the previous template. And then we'll add a third one here, and that was up around 19 plus a pair. And that gets us back to our roads template. And again, we don't want to transition from the previous template. All right, so we got that information. We'll save and exit. Now keep in mind, we're using the template series file only for Highway 1. The other two roads are still both using a standard template. We'll save our settings and process. Everything gets removed. It recreates this. I get to name, whoa, that was almost bad. I get to name my surface. We'll replace the previous one. Well, you can see the difference already where that bridge falls. We can actually go in and view the 3D surface and see that as well, because we don't have all those deep fills going in anymore. The slopes simply come up to the bridge and stop. So that's going to adjust my cut and fill volumes and give me some more control over that. We also offer what we call a fly-through or a fly-over. So here we've got options between screen entities or surfaces, and I'm just going to do a free flight through here. Click OK, pick a starting point, direction to go, and the surface I want to be on. And I've got my vehicle set up to be a Hummer. Let me change that to a driver position. And let's drop that speed down just a little bit. Click Run. And what I'll be doing here is I just use my left and right arrow for turns. Let's slow down a little more. Going across the bridge here, a little scary. I don't have any guardrail on here yet. So you can see as I hit those turns how it adjusts where I'm going. You can also use 3D polylines to control your route. Oh, falling off the road. In which case it would simply track along that 3D polyline. So I could actually draw out the route that I want this to take using a polyline, project it to the surface, and follow that. Anything else we need to cover, Lad? Anything that jumps to mind for you or questions?
Well, a few things just for those users who are looking to possibly get into Carlson with the IntelliCAD route. We still currently have our ESRI GIS Starter Kit promotion going on for IntelliCAD users. Information is available on the Carlson website. We will also be continuing to work with our programming staff to find out if there are options in the software that we need to address for improvement areas. So for clients that are out there looking to have features in the software that maybe they really like or they want to have added that are better suited for specific tasks that maybe we don't address. Jim showed some really remarkable things here today. Carlson is very open to working with our clients to develop the software solutions that we have. A few other things with the Hydro users, we do have our interface into the HydroCAD program available with Carlson 2010, and again, the technical support is a big one. You know, we continue to work with our clients directly so that if they have questions, they get them addressed by us. They don't have to provide us with credit card information or be on any kind of a maintenance subscription plan. It is available to anybody who is a registered user of the software, even if you're even evaluating and you want to use the technical support staff for getting some of those questions answered. We're here for you. So Jim and I are both available to also answer your questions and be happy to talk with you about how we can get you into Carlson at a very attractive price points.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending, and Lad, thank you for fielding the questions and helping out today. Hope you guys found this information valuable, and like Lad said, if there are any other questions that pop up, don't hesitate to give us a call. Have a great day.